Quarantine FM live presentation sessions, getting it in with the intel. What's good? Big shout out to everybody rejoining. Hey lot. You already know what it is. Restart the intro tune. Let's get some people back in the place. Roll call though. Where you at? Where you from? What's good and what's going on? Have you got your notepad? Are you taking notes? Are you inviting your friends? Big up Eritrea inside the place. Big up DC inside the place. Big up everybody in Germany inside the place. Alright, done that. Selected DJ. Big shout out to New York inside the place. There. I hope that everything is cool enough. I hope that things are looking a little safer there. Big up Colorado. Yeah. Big up Suriname inside the place. Oh gosh. Maryland. Oh yeah. Big up the Ndebele Swahili crew down in South Africa. The Zulu nation and that. Big up Brazilios, Portugal, London. Oh gosh, I don't know where FWI is. That's a madness. Big up Jamrock, you already done know. Jamrock Medea, LA Dea. Alright, so just in case anybody who is not familiar with what's going on now, obviously we're getting it in with the presentation. The presentation is called Africa from a Worldview. Hey look, my sister Sheila inside the place. Big up Libya even. Big up South London. There. Anyway, sidetracked. Big up. The presentation is Africa from a Worldview, and we've been discussing and talking about how there are, of course, many different things that have begun to shape the worldview of Africa. But the most important thing that we need to address at the moment is us as seeds of the diaspora, as Black African Caribbean people. We need to now begin addressing our own perceptions of Africa and how it is that we got out these perceptions so that we can break the chains, emancipate ourselves from mental slavery, and then begin to actually liberate other people's minds, which is, of course, a play on a very special human being's words. In fact, he wasn't actually that special. Haile Selassie, let's be real, he could have done much better things for the people. However, we won't call everybody out on their faults because he did his best, I think. Anyway. Hey lot, Shirelli inside the place. Big up Martinica inside the place. Alright, listen, I don't want to delay the thing, but I will answer this question. Do you think that capitalism has an effect in the Pan-African movement? I know many African diasporic people who know their history but won't forsake relations with some who... I think that question needs some, like a bit at the end in it, because I'm not sure. But do I think that capitalism has an effect on the Pan-African community? I think it does, very much so, because we are economically at a disadvantage, because we are bottlenecked to every opportunity to receive financing into communities which need stabilization, which need education, which need healthcare, which need all of the different things that go into making a community a functioning society. So yeah, capitalism is a thing which affects the Black community. I believe that capitalism is something which more Black people need to begin to understand, and so that we can reshape how capitalism works, because at the moment capitalism is for and is at the expense of many other people, whereas that doesn't have to be the case. For example, the mineral industry, which obviously powers things like laptops, phones, is a $1 trillion industry. So there is no reason why the people who are picking the minerals on the ground at the start aren't paid fair wages for their time. There's no reason. There's literally no reason. Apple, by paying the hundreds of thousands of workers all across the world who mine their different materials, would not lose much of their profits by paying people better. Simple. So let's just do conscious capitalism. Anyway. What do you think about the discrimination of blacks in China? It's not new. So to me, to be honest with you, it's not new information to me. I'm not surprised that this has been happening. This has been happening. So yeah, I don't know. It's a great question, but it's disgusting. Chinese people need to realize where they come from. As we've been discussing in this presentation, Africa is the origin of civilization. It's literally self-hate. Every time a non-African person has something disrespectful to say to Africa and African people, it's actually self-hate, because technically speaking, everything that you know as a human being came out of that continent anyway. Motherfucker. Anyway, let's get it back in with this presentation. Boom. Back. Alright, so the last thing we was talking about. What do I think about Chinese people living in Africa? If they don't respect the local culture, if they're violating nature, they need to be punished accordingly. They need to be removed from the continent. Oh, this is my Egyptian brother. Hello, my brother. Everything goes well. Ooh, he's telling me that my Egypt trip can continue. Everybody's scared about travel, but, you know, listen, you need to speak to people on the ground there. Anyway, that's here nor there. That's a different conversation. We were talking about if you oh, let me turn the comments off as well, because I'm going to get distracted. Bam. Destroy the image and pride will diminish. So as I was saying very briefly, these are some, you know, some of the... We've got this guy here, some Mexican brother who's not African, out here saying nigga this, nigga that, nigga this, and we wonder, you know, where we're at. We have images like this of European colonizers coming in and having people bow down to the sky daddy. These images of us joking and jiving, lazy, around blacks, never relaxed, the creation of the super predator. Like, these are the type of images which have been portrayed, published, brandished, and banged out there in the mainstream media, which have helped create the non-African and even the African self-perception. So as I was saying, and I'll repeat myself just for the sake of making sure that everybody gets where I'm coming from. When it came to Black History Month, and when I'm speaking about my own experience of kind of high school, I don't remember them talking about any real contextual information of my Caribbean ancestry. I don't remember them telling me about any achievements of Caribbean people that wasn't facilitated to them by the European people who'd enslaved them. So they'll tell me about the things that were created on plantations, but they won't tell me about all of the amazing ancient societies that went into the people that you kidnapped. Okay, they'll tell us about Marcus Garvey, they'll tell us about Martin Luther King, they'll tell us about Malcolm X, but they assassinated his character. He died of a broken heart. Martin Luther King, they killed him. El-Had Shabazz, they murked him. So they'll happily tell us about these because they don't want you to know. They don't want you to know about the success stories. They don't want you to know. I don't want you to be hyped up. They don't want you to have a positive mental attitude or understanding of your power culturally. Okay. When it came to, for example, Black History Month, as I was saying, they'd roll out the same boring, repetitive programs that skims over the 60s, the 70s, the black inventors, the 20th century, and the different scientific inventions and things like that. But it never, ever went back far enough to talk about Bakongo, Mali, Timbuktu, Ouagadougou, Mauritania, or any of these amazing advanced civilizations like Zimbabwe, Merowe, Kush, Punt. Never going to talk to you about them, because that's going to give you too much of a positive mental attitude. That's going to give you too much things to be happy about, and we don't want that because we're assassinating the character. So, great. it's amazing that we've been able to create these things here. You know, you've got obviously man like Aris LaTham, Alexander Mills, who've obviously, you know, Benjamin Benneker, the gas mask. We fucking need the gas mask now, don't we? Paul E. Williams creating the helicopter. I can never pronounce this guy's name. Matt Zilger, who created like the shoe machine. You know, they'll tell us about all of these things here, but they ain't going to tell us about Kush, Kemet. They ain't going to tell us about Somali, the ancient Somali communities, the Punite communities, the Himba peoples, because the Himba people are more ancient than what people know. They ain't going to talk to us about the Twa, the Sara, the Nok, the Ife people. Well, we do know about the Ife people because Nigeria is very popular culture. But essentially my point is they're not going to present and they're not going to highlight and they're not going to show us all of this information. They're not going to openly talk about Mansa Musa. They're not going to talk about the amazing structures of Malay. Now, we in the West, we always tend to think that we're the only ones who are miseducated. And the fact is that on the continent, they are just as misinformed and subject to neo-colonial agendas as we are here in the West. So I take, for example, the educational system of the Democratic Republic of Congo. They teach more about the short period of suffering under the Belgian colonial rule than they do of the vast millennia of ancient and Middle Age history, including the span of the Mani-Congo and the Bakongo. So in the Democratic Republic of Congo right now, the educational systems speak more about this here, this short period of time here, as terrible as it was, than they do of the thousands and thousands and thousands of years of history, anthropological history that come out of this area. Now, if you were a young Congolese student, okay, it would be an absolute fact that all of them know who Henry Morton Stanley is. That's this brother up here. He was the first Obroni, or Mazungu, or Mondele, the first foreigner to have said to have navigated the Congo. Okay. What people don't think get is how much of a huge social political advantage economically it is to miseducate an entire nation of people. It's also a fair point, I think, to make out that despite the vastness of the discoveries and breakthroughs in understandings and paradigm shifts concerning ancient Africa, much of this new information does not find its way into the classroom. Remember what I was saying earlier about the information spreading and how new information doesn't get passed down because new information is always becoming available. So despite the fact that we are making discoveries, we are making new breakthroughs and having new understandings and paradigm shifts about ancient Africa, not much of this information is being passed down to our kids in the classrooms because of all of the misinformation and additional information which is being put out there on a regular basis. Okay, so huge efforts are made to strip indigenous peoples of their ancestral claim to the remains of great civilizations, and they are also very quick to give credence to countries in the Arabian Peninsula. So as a classic example, Egypt is not allowed to be great as an African nation, but it can only be great if it has influence from Mesopotamia, Syria, Iran, Baghdad, from the Arabian Peninsula. That's how it can be great, but not as an African nation. Okay. Take for example another group of people. Okay, they were advanced, they were vibrant, they were artistic, they were a very influential group of society, a group of people that all popped up around this area here. They were called the Jukan, the Nok, the Sahu, and the Duguwa people. So the Jukan, Nok, Sahu, and the Duguwa. These are all groups of people that popped up around this area here, and they all had signs and showed signs of advanced civilization, art, religion, social organization, reading, writing, merchantry, trade. They all popped up around 600 to 100 600 BCE to around 100 CE. And instead of general science accepting that this influx of advanced knowledge and information was coming out of Egypt here, history says that all of this advanced knowledge and new information which was popping up here came from here and here, but did not come from here. Do you get what I'm saying? All of these new populations, these new civilizations pop up here around 0 AD. And it's very obvious that the information came out of Egypt. But they're saying that it came from other areas because they don't want to acknowledge that it's African information. It's African influence. In short, by the way, we know that the people of ancient Kemet fit the characteristics that were required for the different types of sciences and the different developments of engineering and art and spirituality that are documented in these areas. We know that all of those characteristics are found here. And it's spread. Just like you start to see them in West Africa. With, for example, in the Nigerian ENQI system, if you look at all of the Orishas, you can literally match them up to the netures of ancient Kemet. But that's a different presentation. You know, I mean, you can just look at some of the figurines and understand. So these are where some of the populations were popping up that I was talking to you about that came out of ancient Kemet. And these are the types of artworks that they were dealing with. And to me, I see lots of similarities, you know, very sexual. That's looking like a head of a penis. Again, if you go into ancient Kemet, you're going to notice that they merge sexual representation into their life-like artworks because they were never scared to show their connection sexually to the earth and to the universe and to the rest of the people. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, the reason that they don't want to acknowledge this is because by acknowledging that the people of ancient Kemet were scattered all through this period, this area here, after ancient Kemet fell, it would mean that they would have to concede that the people of West Africa are the descendants of the people of ancient Kemet, which means that they were an advanced people. These are the same advanced people that they forced into enslavement. They don't want to admit that. They don't want you to have that connection. Again, very simply, let me break this down. Ancient Kemet falls and begins to fall at around 600 BCE. Finally falls at around 33 CE. Between that period of time, all the way up to 100 CE, people of Kemet are leaving. They're taking their knowledge, their wisdom, their science, their engineering, their arts, their social practices with them to this area here called the Sahel region. In the Sahel region, you have areas like the Nok and ENQI cultures that pop up. In Nok and ENQI cultures, you have the Orisha. The Orisha can be identified almost identically to the Netcharu, the gods, the deities of ancient Egypt. Okay, what we're saying is they don't want to acknowledge that these people were highly influenced by the people coming out of here, because by doing that, they have to acknowledge and concede that these people here were never primitive. They were never savage. They were never disabled. They were never unable. Because how can a primitive people come from a group of people who have generated and cultivated this level of knowledge, wisdom, and information? Not culture. Look at that. I wish I went more in with the images on this, but I can compare Kemetic deities that look like this and Kemetic headpieces that look like this. I can show you Kemetic artwork that looks like this, but this comes out of Nigeria. I'm telling you, they just don't want to admit. Again, I know that we've already been through this, okay, but they can't try to tell us about there's no advanced knowledge and advanced information in Africa when we have the Ashango and the Lebombo bone, which is showing us advanced information about the solar connection to women's menstrual cycles. That's an advanced knowledge and advanced information there. They're mining iron ore 40,000 years ago at a place called Lion Cavern in Swaziland. That's an advanced knowledge and information. Look, early Bantu-speaking settlers in southern Africa arrived here around 480 AD and after. Sorry, I can't even read. Sorry, let me read this from the start. This is the oldest known mine in the world. The ancestors of the sand mined hematite here about 43,000 years ago. A people who were mining 43,000 years ago are not a primitive people. So, I'm telling you, psychological warfare, a real life thing. Thing for those who don't understand why being concerned with Africa is important. It is because that Africa is where you are from, and for as long as your back is turned on the continent, it allows for non-African people to buy up the land, continue to take advantage of the resources, and continue to take advantage of the people. The diaspora's current ongoing disassociation to the continent is by design. It's not an accident. It is actually deviously clever what they've been doing to us. And there are, of course, more reasons than I've got time to and knowledge of to go into. But stereotypes, propaganda, and images that are presented in the West are a very, very huge part of why we feel how we do to the continent. So just to put things into perspective for you, the average Westerner watches as little as 2 hours of television a day. That's 14 hours a week. That's 56 hours a month. That is 672 hours a year. In and amongst the terrible attempt to relay an accurate depiction of reality, TV continually beams negative, ratchet, dysfunctional images of black people 24/7. They only show you successful black people that they control, and the ones that they do show you are always connected to the music industry, and they promote self-destructive behavior, or they are athletes with big wages and no opinions. So, let me get off the screen. Mind control is a thing. Look at this motherfucker. Look at that. That's Charles Barkley. What? You must have lost your black African mind to be posing for some sports magazine in chains like that. But regarding the continent and the objective of keeping our backs turned on Africa, it all revolves around the images and the narrative that are being projected. Before we quickly talk about the media, you need to understand that this all began before there was even TV. Let me tell you that again. The propaganda to begin to mash people's minds up when it comes to Africa began before there was even a TV. Prior to the 90 CE, so like 1,980 years ago, or sorry, 1,910 years ago, before that, all maps were drawn with east at the top of the map, because a lot of ancient civilizations openly venerated the sun, and the sun rises in the east, and thus there was, of course, the most important cardinal point to the ancient world. But hold on, let me get a visual representation. So up until 90 CE, maps that were found would have looked similar to this. Of course, they wouldn't have been. The people of the ancient world didn't have maps like this. They didn't know about all of the continents, this, that, and the third. But maps were the other way around. Okay. Obviously, this is how maps look to us now. And basically, the notion that north should always be up and east was at the right was established by an Egyptian Roman astronomer called Ptolemy around 90 to 168 BCE. So before north, east was typically at the top of the map, which denoted, of course, where the sun came from. And what I'm saying is we as African people have been so bamboozled that we don't even have a correct geographic perspective of the continent that we're from or the world that we're living in. The change in orientation made by cartographers, it then placed Europe above Africa. See how Africa's above? But no, that's the wrong psychological image. So we're going to flip it round. We're going to put you at the bottom. And also, many of you know that Africa on our maps today is never correctly represented. We actually know that Africa is so large that it can fit over 13 of the world's largest nations in there and still have space. So all of China, the UK, that's Madagascar. Madagascar is a tiny ass little island and the UK fits in there. That's India, China, United States. So look, you're going to try to tell me about the world is overpopulated, but all of these people can fit on one continent. Are you crazy? Are you crazy? Spain, Portugal, Belgium, Netherlands, France, Germany, Italy, Switzerland. Smoking crack. But my point is, it's very easy to overlook the subconscious effects that this is having. This type of imagery is brainwashing us day in, day out. What they do is they make very small and what would seem like insignificant changes, and it makes it very easy for you to overlook and ignore the inner voice, which is kind of calling you back to your roots. Now, concerning the media and their responsibility in the defamation of Africa's global image, it's without a doubt that it's the most overt, the most blatant, and the easiest to witness. You know, we could talk about the various different TV shows and the ignorant news platforms, but what I want to focus on are the general stereotypes of the continent itself that we don't typically think about, because these are the ones that we often quite innocently, unintentionally find ourselves playing into. So just for those who don't know, stereotypes create preconceived notions that go on to consciously and subconsciously dictate our worldview and our actions. There are more stereotypes, of course, than I actually have time to cover. There are millions of examples, of course. But we're just going to go over a few of them. They are in no particular order. Okay, they are just the ones that I felt were important to cover. You know, not one of them isn't any more self-destructive or destructive than the other. Okay, but they all play a very, very, very important role in destroying the character of African people. Like, look how crazy that is. Look how crazy that is. That is wild. So when I'm in schools or private sessions, or depending on what presentation we're covering, one of the first questions that I'll typically ask students is, what springs to mind when you think about Africa? And sadly, one of the typical responses that I will get are things like disease, poverty, conflict, disaster, corruption. And I have to remind people, or I have to tell the students, I give them a Malcolm X quote. I say that the media is the most powerful entity on earth. They have the power to make the innocent guilty and the guilty innocent, and that's power because they control the minds of the masses. And then he goes on to say, if you're not careful, the newspapers will have you hating the people who are being oppressed and loving the people who are doing the oppressing. So the first stereotype we got deal with is broken Africa. Broken Africa is probably, one of the newest and most easily identifiable, as it can be literally seen and used everywhere. In fact, there's entire industries built and based around the concept of broken Africa. And the most important one, or the one that everybody knows about the most, is of course charity. Charities create the narrative that's intelligently designed to trigger certain emotions, and pictures are more powerful than words when it comes to the brain and memory and association. So they beam all of these images to us. You know, they show us the skinny legs, the poverty, and it's very real. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say that what charity is doing is inadvertently wrong, because they are showing you the reality. It's the manner in which they are showing you, because they want to take your money and they don't spend it in the right way. You know what I'm saying? What happens is the focus is directed solely on the negative aspects that appear in different areas of Africa, marginalizing the remainder of the continent, declaring that these negatives are universal, so that one bad thing that happens in one place in Africa is now happening on the entire continent, and we all know that that's not true. But because Africa isn't able, and because we say Africa as well, and this is something that we all fall victim to, we call Africa the continent. But of course, there's 54, arguably 55 different nations, arguably 56, and they are all individually operating self-autonomous nations who have different cultures, thousands of different people who speak thousands of different languages. But what it does, like I said, is the broken Africa stereotype marginalizes the remainder of the continent, as if to say that everything is like that all over the continent. So things such as political corruption, famine, civil war, conflicts, diseases, these are all the type of things that we hear about in the news, but we are never given any context to any of these problems. Many of the problems, my bad. We're never given any context to any of the issues that we see or hear about on the news. We just hear, corrupt leader does this. But who forced that corrupt leader? Because a lot of African leaders, they have European sugar daddies who tell them, if you don't do this, you won't receive your check this month. You know what I'm saying? Wait there, let me take a sip of my drink and spark my thing. Many of the problems that are perpetuated about broken Africa stem from the colonial regime and have only continued to get worse over time, over a global perspective, because people continue to benefit. Like, people benefit from this here. People benefit from these caricatures. People benefit from putting Africa in debt. People benefit from the poverty, the AIDS, the hunger, corruption. Because they can generate markets, they can generate advertisement, they can generate charity from it, and they can skim money off the top. Like, it's disgusting. Bono, this dickhead, this conceited asshole wants you to believe that he can save Africa by squashing his balls into these tight leather jeans. I've never actually read that before. I'd never have said that. But this guy thinks that he can save Africa by generating money and using it to give out free stuff. That's retarded. Free things never saved a nation. Anyway, let me not go off topic, otherwise we're not going to finish this one. Instead of showing broken Africa, these are the things that they should be showing us. They should be showing us that it was official as of 2016 that over 500 million Africans lived in urban centres, and that the number of cities that with more than 1 million people in was 65. So there's 65 cities in Africa with more than 1 million people living in there, compared to 52 in 2011. This is already on par with Europe. Okay, it's higher than India, and it's more than North America. There's 40% of the population living in cities in Africa. This is more urbanized than India. Africa is known as the most developing continent on earth. It boasts several mega cities. Okay, Nairobi, Johannesburg, Lagos, Kinshasa, Brazzaville, Cairo, Accra, Khartoum. Some of the greatest deserts, beaches, tropical rainforests, mountain ranges are all in Africa. Here's the other thing. I don't even want to get into it too deep, but these are the type of things that they should be showing us, not just the sewage and the broken ghettos and this, that, and the third. Show me Khartoum. Show me Durban. Show me Addis Ababa. Show me Rwanda. Show me Egypt. Oh, this one's Egypt. You know what I'm saying? So, like, trying to do us wrong. What's this? Oh, another thing as well. The top 10 fastest growing economies in 2018: Ghana, Ethiopia, Ivory Coast, Djibouti, Senegal, Tanzania. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 60%. We have 60% of the list. Can't tell me nothing. These are some successful businessmen and women out of the continent. Basically, Europeans went into Africa and they began spreading the notion that native inhabitants were backwards. They were savage. They were primitive. Their sentiment was stuck. Yeah, and it's been taught to the minds of the less progressive societies. A disgusting example of this stereotype that's manifested itself in Western society today and has been deemed acceptable. This is Otta Benga, by the way. Otta Benga lived in a zoo. Europeans forced to live in a zoo, blood. But this mentality has gone on and manifested itself in modern day society today to allow crackheads like this to make statements like this. When shortages are the currency of everyday life, filling the stomach is the only art. Now check what she said and why she said this. This is somebody called Ray Tannehill, and in her book she said that she wouldn't cover African recipes and African food in her book about world. Sorry, let me say this again. She made a book called Food in History, and she made this statement about why she wouldn't cover African food. Because basically Africans are poor, so they don't have good food, is what she's saying. She's saying, basically, because Africans are on the brink of starvation all of the time, when do they ever have the time to make nice food? Are you on crack? Are you crazy? Have you never tried Ethiopian food? Meze? Have you never tried jollof? You never... Aki, the abundance of fruits and vegetables that come out of the continent, and you're going to try tell me gosh. Anyway, primitive Africa. This is the next one. This is the next stereotype we're going to deal with. Primitive Africa, we've kind of touched on with a little bit. We kind of mentioned it a little bit, but the reality that Europeans transmuted this worldview of Africa to benefit and supplement their agenda to control the resources. So basically, to get control of diamonds, they said that, these African people don't even use them. They're too primitive to see the value in them. So we'll just take them. By dehumanizing, by primatizing, by savagerizing, even though they're not real words, by doing that to these people, it then removes people's moral objection to objectify the stopping of that behavior. Do you get me? Anyway, the notion of primitive Africa causes people to imagine that Africa is a place lacking advancement, lacking evolution, a place where everybody still uses stone tools, they dance around campfires, they can barely string words together, they can't use sentences, and basically it's like people instantly reduce Africa down to this place where civilization came from and then forgot all about the liberal arts like reading, writing, maths, science, medicine, astrology, astronomy, geology, spirituality. So it's crazy. They're like, yep, human beings come from Africa, but you didn't do anything else. That was it. Like, it's like human beings were created there and then shipped to somewhere else to be developed and do great things. It's like they didn't learn anything great on the continent. You know, they'll show us all of these images without any context. They won't show us that there's there's some very significant reasons behind these things here. One of them is anti-colonial. Not only are these, quote unquote tribal. I don't like the word tribal. We'll talk about that later. We'll talk about that later. But one of the main reasons why a lot of ethnicities and ethnic groups in Africa started to do this was to make them less attractive to invading outsiders. Men wanted to protect their women, so they put plates in their lips so that they weren't as attracted to outsiders, so that they weren't being raped. This is just a thing. Again, over time, there are also other things that are incorporated into that practice, such as obviously the different designs, which obviously demark, what group you are from, what region you are from, what trade you are from, etc., your status. But my point is, they're going to show us all of these different things here, and they're going to not give you any context behind it. Okay? They're going to talk about scarification like it's a completely negative thing. But what they should be showing us, what they should be showing us is the Industrial Revolution. They should be showing us that we're flying airplanes, developing airplanes, engineering airplanes. They should be showing us that we're competent teachers, competent leaders. I don't know why I picked Nelson Mandela, because he was a bit of a twat, but we're competent teachers. We're beautifully creative. We're in the labs. We're doing biochemistry, we're doing physics, we're doing advanced science. But they're not showing us these things. They're not showing us our rich culture of progression and sustainability and future-proofing. Another really annoying thing that comes with the idea of primitive Africa is that everybody looks at the modern day populations as a perfect example and a model example of how people looked and were thousands of years ago. Yeah, and then they get labeled ancient. So frustratingly, most people don't consider or understand that many of the people that they label ancient were ethnic groups that were created through colonization. So a perfect example is the current majority population in Egypt, who were once, of course, known as Kemites. The black community, which experienced 4 golden ages under various different African rulers. That kingdom stretched for 3,000 years over, many different kingdoms, and over 3 different millennia they encountered many different invasions, to the point where, there was Persians, Greeks, Romans, various different Arab caliphates, like all of these various different armies which are threatening and enslaving these different people. They created refugees in ancient Kemet, forcing people back up the Nile, forcing people back over the regions of the Sahel. Okay, so these people who we're looking at now in Egypt, they're not the ancient people of ancient Kemet, as an example. Okay, simple. A lot of these people here, I mean, we know with this oh my god, I can't even remember their names. I haven't even got the comments on, so you can't even remind me. Yeah, the Himba, Dogon, Zulu, but why can I never... These are the most bait ones as well. These are the ones that everybody knows. Oh, I'm gonna have to turn the comments on. Who are these guys? I can never... Why can't I now remember them names today? Somebody tell me who these are. The Maasai, don't know, come on. For the record, I remembered that before I looked at the comments. Alright, anyway, oh my days, it's a mess. Yeah, cool. Boom. Just to back up what I was saying about the people of ancient Kemet not being the people of that are there today. These are the faces of Egypt. Do they look like the people in the statues? No, they don't. These are I believe, the Wadabi. Aromo. But what they should be showing us, instead of primitive Africa, is showing us the big mega malls, the academies. This is Accra Academy, the Nelson Mandela Square down in South Africa, which is in Joburg. The supermarkets. They should be showing us everyday life, the communal workspaces. They have workspaces there too. They have laptops and internet there too, They have shopping. Piss me off. one of the easy... Oh, hold on. Have I missed something? No, I haven't. The next topic is exotic Africa. The next stereotype is exotic Africa, okay? And one of the best ways, or the easiest ways to summarize exotic Africa, is the way that the West has overrepresented certain ethnic groups in their advertisements. So, for example, the Maasai people, the people who I couldn't remember, they are what people tend to think of because they fit the profile. They're flamboyant, they're creative, they're elaborate garments, they're animated spiritual practices. They are still partially tied to their pastoral, nomadic, fuck's sake, primitive lifestyles, because they are still, you know, so far removed and so different to how the West sees life. They're exotic. Yeah? And then what the West will do is they will just thrust that in our faces. And then literally what happens is they become the face of campaigns. And now people have ignorantly brought into this idea that everybody on the continent dresses like this. That every person is part of this culture. When the reality is the Maasai just exist in this tiny little box area here. So the West's ability through media and advertisement and propaganda is able to take small sections and groups of people and then give the rest of the world the image that everybody looks like this, acts like this, does this. I'll give you an example of some of the advertisement campaigns. Look at this one, the cheek. Because, of course, the Maasai people are renowned for covering huge tracts of land. Land Rover approached them about doing Land Rover ads. And look at that. They turned them into a car. They put the tires upon their feet. We have the whole cultural appropriation thing going in. There's no ownership of the copyright of the prints. You have Mzungu woman going in to the local ends, dressing up, doing the thing and that. But Maasai people are not getting no kickback. So, despite there being, you know, the inspiration behind multi-million, possibly multi-billion-dollar industries based on their traditions, their styles, their patterns, they still remain relatively poor. And this, of course, is, you know, no surprise. They don't adhere to the legal system like everybody else does. So how should it, or why should they be expected to, you know, acknowledge a legal system in that way? So I know that this live stream is going to cut out shortly. I ain't doing a third session. You don't pay me enough to do that. There are, of course, other stereotypes. I'm gonna put the comments back on, and then we're gonna ride out.